It's a super big mistake. It's just,
Yeah.
it's such a, there it is for us, this profound knowledge that we're saying, no, I'm okay of my own. It's like, no, you're not. Like, life is going to bite you in the bum. You just wait. And when you do, you're going to call on this because you'll have to.
Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I sat down with Mrs Tammy Peterson. We spoke about spirituality and how you are enough no matter where you're at. I hope that you hear something new, that you find this conversation useful.
About your life not being about you. And there's something, I think you were talking about a experience that you had when you were told that you were sick, and you were kind of okay with that, which is like, most people wouldn't be, but you said that you were okay with that. You were like, well, I've life is, that's just what happens in life. But then you got home and you saw your kids and the family, and you just suddenly, then it hit you. And two things about that struck me that I really wanted to bring out, which was firstly that you weren't afraid. And then there was something much bigger than you that seemed to bring on the fear. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah, that was very, it was quite a moment for me, it was probably it was a life-changing moment. I've never had a life-changing moment like I had at that time. So it was very striking. I think my dad is very matter of fact. He's very accepting. In fact, he's 90 years old. I just went to visit him on Vancouver Island. I hadn't seen him in 3 years because I had been so sick, and then COVID happened, and so I just hadn't been able to see him. So I went to see him, and my sister is now suffering with the same dementia my mother had. So we were all having dinner, and my sister's boyfriend said to my dad, when did Beth stop eating so that she started losing weight? And so my mom died in 2007, so that's quite a while ago, but still he said, I don't ever remember that happening. He said, I don't really remember much about that. And I said to Dad, do you live in the moment? And he said, yes. And, that's something that most people strive for, to live in the moment. For him, it was natural. And that was I felt really good about hearing that about him, is that he lives in the moment. So I think I learned some of that from him. So part of being accepting, I learned from him for sure. So when I was in the hospital and they told me I had 11 months to live, I was accepting of that. But the whole idea of being accepting is for myself, really. And in a way, that's as it should be, because you have to be living for your true self. So I was trying to, but when I got home and I saw the look on my son and his wife, I saw the look on their faces, the look of horror that my news of only living for 11 months more meant to them. I realized that I had not only been coming from a place of acceptance, but partly maybe coming from a place of denial and not letting in things that might be painful. And so then I saw what I had decided at the hospital as being something that I could improve. And so when they said that to me, I realized that there was way more to this decision than I had given, an hour before. And why did I come to that? That's the question. Like, why did that happen to me at that moment? And I've been thinking about that really since it happened. One thing I think happened was that I'd gone to 150 lectures that my husband had done. I went to all his biblical lectures on Genesis. And other than that, although I have a belief in God, I hadn't really spent any time reading the Bible or studying religion. I'd studied some philosophy, I'd studied some psychology, I'd studied yoga, but I hadn't studied religion. And I was born into a Christian household. So my foundation was Christian. Like most people in the Western world, my foundation was Christian. But I definitely hadn't put my time into learning and understanding it. And I think I got much more understanding by going to his lectures. So it's possible that at that moment, my insight was influenced by that education that I had from him. The other thing I think it was it's just such a profound moment to see what 11 months in finality meant to someone I loved. It really brought it home to me, just exactly what a short tragic time that was. And you know how they say, until you've walked a mile in another man's shoes, you don't know what it is to be them. And I think for a moment I put myself in my son's shoes and saw it from his point of view and realized that, oh, you know, all those people that go through chemotherapy and radiation and, I mean, you know, you name it, the horrible things that people can have to be accepting of and put themselves through in order to live. I realized that it was really up to me to do what was offered to me to live.
Yeah.
And that was a healthier attitude.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's almost like, and you can correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but what I'm hearing is almost like when it was in the context of you, it wasn't going in. And then when you put yourself in someone else's shoes that was when it was kind of assumed, because it wasn't kind of, that other person wouldn't have to deal with all that fear as well when that thought came to them. And I feel like that's a really interesting phenomenon that happened there. And thanks for kind of sharing that. There's something else that you said I wanted to pick up on, which was about being present and being in the moment. I was wondering if you could talk more about that, because it's something that a lot of people say, and it's something that a lot of people strive for, like you said. But what does that look like to you?
That's a good question. It's a very challenging practice to be in the moment all the time, especially when there's things happening and there's maybe emotional things happening. And that's when you really want to stay in the moment, because you can get carried away with your emotions and then you can't see clearly at all. So this practice of being in the moment is something to practice when times are good. It's like a prayer that you say every day. By the time you need it, you have it. It's part of you. It can be useful to you. It's the same with staying in the moment. So I didn't understand what staying in the moment meant exactly, or what being in the moment meant. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he was saying in his writing that that God is in the breath. He's in between the words. And I thought, what does that mean? You know, so I was thinking about that, and I didn't understand it. But now I realize that, say I pray, and I pray the rosary. So I pray the rosary in the morning. After I pray, I'm done praying, I sit quietly for 15 minutes. And sometimes there's a lot to think about. Depends what's going on in my life, you know, because I might have some problems that need resolution. And so my mind will go there. And all I can do is notice that my mind has gone there. That's being in the moment itself, is to notice that your mind has gone there. And the other thing is to trust that that thought now will be taken care of, and to come back to the breath, and then stay with the breath through the time that you're being quiet. And I just ask for God's will in that breath. And I don't know what that's going to be. None of us can know what that's going to be. And it's arrogant to ask God for anything and to tell him what to do. It's mostly arrogant to tell him what to do. I've heard someone say that God has abandoned me, and I thought, it's more like you abandoned God, because God doesn't abandon us. God is reaching for us. All we have to do is turn around and reach, and that bond of spirit is there for us. And so, thinking that being angry at God and thinking in the way that God has abandoned you puts you in the center as the central figure, and we can't be the central figure because we don't know everything. We're limited. So there's no way we can be the central figure. The central figure has to be God. It has to be an all-knowing, uh, divinity that's in each of us that bonds us and brings us together. Like, why would you want to talk to me? Because there's something about me, maybe that's universal. And
Yeah.
so that being in the moment is finding that universal. So if someone comes up to talk to you and you don't have an agenda for them that you want to put onto them, you can be in the moment. You can hear what they have to say and then wait for a response to come from you that is not something that you've tried to formulate while they were talking, but in response. And maybe there's nothing, so then you stay quiet. But that's more authentic than saying something that you've thought up that wasn't even based on what they were saying. So to be in the moment means that you're giving them that sacred space to fill it with whatever it is that they need to fill it with. And sometimes it might be quite disturbing, whatever it is. But if you can just stay there, you may find the right action. And that could answer what is fundamental about whatever it is that they're striving for. And so that's what I want to do. I want to be in the moment so that if there's anything that I can answer to, that I'll be ready.
Yeah. Is it almost like being in the unknown where you haven't formulated any opinions on anything? It's just an empty space that is an unknown, and it gives space for something, because you know how you were talking about a universal, all-knowing truth that can come to us. But in a way, it might be that if we've formulated opinions and we're thinking about those, it's almost we've got to go to our own unknown to tap into the big known. Is that right? Would
Yes.
you say?
Yes, that sounds right, because we don't know what we're going to say. It's unknown. We don't know who's going to come and what they're going to say. That's unknown. Everything is unknown. Everything is unknown, except we have I won't want to say control, but we can have the presence to try not to have any agenda or any expectations, to try to leave the moment open to the unknown, to see what can come. And that's where miracles come. That's when miracles happen. And that's quite uh, off-putting and a joyous moment when you see that you were patient enough and quiet enough and ready enough for something to happen that you just couldn't have thought up yourself. You couldn't have made a better decision. This is the way it was supposed to go, and it was way far away from what you were planning and thinking how things should be. And so what is that? Then you have to ask, what just happened? If I didn't decide it, how is it decided? There's got to be some connection that we have to our world that is in flow. And if we don't interrupt that flow, then we can see it. So it's
As I'm
tricky
even
because
thinking,
it's hard to do that. It's hard to stay present because, well, we get busy, right? We get busy with something. And I tend to get busy. If I get nervous, I get busy. I'll, clean my house. I'll take out the garbage. I'll wash the floor. I'll do whatever needs being done, except for thinking about the thing that I'm supposed to be thinking about. That's why it's really good to sit down and meditate for a while, because then those things will come to your mind and you think, oh, yeah, I was avoiding that. I definitely have to think about that. And it gives you space. So it's all about giving yourself space so that you don't deny, so that you don't obsess, so you can be in the present. Because all those other things you do are just a waste of time. You could be, if you were just waiting for the right moment to have some insight, then you can move on in your life instead of doing all these other things, these busy things and having this thing take much, much longer to occur. And so I think that it saves time too.
So are you saying that insight is, rather than something we can think ourselves to, it's more of a gift when the moment is right?
Yes, it's a gift. It's something to be grateful for. So to obsess on gratitude is a really good practice, because if you're obsessing on gratitude, then you'll see the miracles. If you have faith, that something is going to happen, whatever's going to happen is supposed to happen. So just having faith, that doesn't mean that things are going to go your way or anything. It just means that whatever is supposed to happen will happen. Let's be ready for it. Let's we can be, so that we can answer in our way that's truthful to who we are. And that might be different for you than it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, most likely it is.
Most likely. We can all be sitting in a car, one behind the other, and a homeless person can come up to the window and ask for money, and they don't know if the windows are going to open or not. It depends if it's the right moment or not. And if it's the right moment, well, it depends who they are. Maybe the windows won't open, or maybe they will. It really depends on what's supposed to happen. And it's not up to us to judge what's supposed to happen. That's up to the universe. So when you get in a rough spot, you have to wonder, there aren't any mistakes. God doesn't make any mistakes, because I call my higher power God. God, everything is the way that it's supposed to be. So if I'm in a mess, or maybe someone I love is in a mess, I have to think about that and make sure that if I was part of the reason that I'm in a mess, or someone I love is in a mess, then going forward, I want to be as clear as I can in the moment, as much as I can, and really not even make any trivial mistakes, to try to at least make things right on my side, so that I'm not adding to the chaos. I don't want to add to the chaos. There's enough chaos, right?
This is something I think you mentioned as well in the podcast that I listened to, where you said that you don't really have time anymore to what would the right word be here? To stay in a space which is not content for you. It's almost like if you have thinking, or you're having emotions of judgment against somebody, or anger, or any of these things, it's almost, how I understood you say it was almost like a waste of time. It doesn't make sense to you anymore to dwell on that thinking and to dwell in that feeling. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't see. And I was wondering, how did you come to see that? Because lots of times people are so tempted to stay there. And even more than that, they think they must stay there in order to make a point, or the other person won't realize if I don't stay there. And it's they're only giving themselves a hard time. But I was wondering how you came to that conclusion, if there was a journey to that.
Well, as I said, I do a lot of yoga. I mostly have done hatha yoga on my own for many, many years. But recently I found a yoga studio that I like, and the woman who runs it is quite spiritual. And so the philosophy is very similar to what I'm talking about now. So I get some of my understanding of myself by visualizing and breathing in colors and imagining if I have any roadblocks, like say control or judgment, that I want to uh, accept, breathe those ideas in to my solar plexus where there's fire, and consume them, and then come out with something different, something more suitable to uh, more generous way of life. So that's one thing I've done. The reading or praying the rosary, I've done quite a bit of reading to find out exactly what the rosary meant. And the rosary is it's a story. It comes from the Bible, and it's quite an inclusive story of the whole. It's the whole passion, right? In this, in the Passion of Christ, in this very 15-minute meditation that you can do. So it's a brilliant um, um, it's a brilliant point that people have worked so hard to find this point where people can access the spiritual in this breathing and rhythmical poem almost, with tactile, because you get to feel the beads. And so there's a lot that keeps you there. In the church, the Eucharist, you're supposed to have a biscuit and a bit of wine. And so that's supposed to, it's supposed to heighten the chance that you will feel that you're with Christ, right? And so the rosary, with all touching all those beads, it's a tactile form of you are here, and Christ is here, and Mary is here. And so, and because you're feeling it, maybe you can also feel it, because it's a very abstract idea to have a power greater than ourselves. What is that? It's open-ended what it is. And so religion has tried in their way to focus it in these ways to help people to have access. So that's helped me to have access. The rosary has helped me to have access. And when I was in the hospital, I had a woman who was coming and praying the rosary with me, and I was speaking to her 2 hours a day, and I was telling her about my life. And so I was really going through my life, really bringing up moments in my life that I found were meaningful to me, of times gone past and people that I've been with that I won't ever have again. So I was really reliving my life on the off chance that, or the on chance either, that my life was over. That was a pretty profound experience. But other things I did too, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books on codependence, on being in a relationship where you're getting your meaning, your feeling of belonging from doing things for other people, or being noticed for the things that you do. Like, these are all, people who become, I'm not saying all people are like this, but some people who want to be known in the public, they might have a hard time loving themselves. But if other people love them, then they think maybe they're okay. And so as long as life is going along fine, and they are being accepted by the public, or maybe even applauded for what they do, then everything is good, because then they feel all right about themselves. But when they step out of the spotlight and all those people are gone, if they don't love themselves, if they haven't accepted who they are and been grateful for who they are, and not who they are to other people, but just who they are, things aren't going to go well for that person. You have to have integrated yourself with your mortality. I think you have to be pretty accepting of who you are and what may happen. And what may happen is you might die. You know, my sister, she's a palliative care nurse, and she said, my grandmother said, when you're young, you might die. When you're old, you must die. And so, as when you're young, you have to realize that you might die and live every, they say live every moment to the fullest. But that's not easy to do, because often if we've been taught maybe that we weren't good enough, or Amy, or not even taught, but as a child, we didn't get the attention we wanted, we thought we weren't good enough. So then we grow up with an idea back in our head somewhere that we can't even remember where it came from, that we're not good enough. So we're always trying to get attention from other people to show us that we're good enough. And when we're alone, we're very uncomfortable, because time with ourselves isn't even worthwhile, because we're not good enough. So why would you even want to spend it with yourself? So a really good exercise is to think back when you're young, and to imagine what you might have been doing. And I can think back when I was young. I used to really like to play in the garden with the dirt, with the worms. I used to catch bees in jars and poke holes in the jars so that they could breathe. And I just loved catching bees. I used to take earthworms and put them in my wagon, and put Kleenex in the wagon, and then put the worms in like they were sleeping and cover them up. I don't think they were very comfortable, but I thought it was a great idea. So I was thinking about all these things, and that was my idyllic time as a youngster. So you can dream up what your idyllic time is as a youngster, and then you can think of a time where there was trouble, or maybe you did something and got in trouble, or there was trouble of some kind. And then you have to think, what did you think of yourself at that moment? And the thought I had was not good enough. And so the exercise was to have this little drawing, and then to write good enough around it, and then to take colored pictures, and then to meditate for 10 minutes while music is playing, and form circles of color around it. And it was a forgiving, it was an accepting exercise of this little kid being good enough. This little kid was good enough. And that's an exercise that I did at Wellspring. And Wellspring is a cancer institute for people who are going through the surgery and the treatment for cancer, or their caregivers, or they're recovering. And so they offer these little courses. And that exercise I thought was quite simple, but brilliant, because it's individual for each of us. Each of us can think up what we used to do as a kid. Each of us can think up a time that things didn't go well, and what is our self-talk at that moment, and realize that we do have some of that self-talk, and it's good to recognize it. It's good to know who we are completely, and so if there's going to be work to do there, that's good. That's a gift, to recognize that there's some trouble. That's a gift. You think, thank you, God, for allowing me to understand something that I hadn't looked at yet. I hadn't looked at that yet. And who knows what not looking at it has done to my life, or has done to the people I'm with. So if I can move past that, who knows what what opportunities will come my way. And then I can just be in the moment and see how my life is different, and realize that this learning is worthwhile.
Wow, there was so much in that, so much. I thought maybe if we just go back for a minute to, how we were saying about the dwelling on things, and that doesn't seem to make sense anymore, to dwell on things that aren't helpful to you. And you were saying that is it praying the rosary? Is that what it's called?
Praying the rosary, yeah.
Right, that praying the rosary and building that connection with God or Jesus, is that the same? Because I come from a Jewish background, and I'm familiar with the
so
terms,
God is fine with you. Yeah. And Jesus is a Christian symbol of transformation. and Mary and Joseph. You know, Joseph is his father, and he lived with Mary, someone that was having a baby, and it wasn't his baby. So he was a good man. He was a good man. And Jesus was this child of Mary's, and it wasn't her baby either. She was humble enough to accept being pregnant with a baby that wasn't hers because she was a virgin. And so it's a story of acceptance and humble and being humble.
And humility. Yeah.
Humility, acceptance, you know, that's really what and many, many, many more, but the,
Yeah,
you
again,
know,
though,
quickly, that's what it means.
Yeah, how would you define, then again, I love going into what does that look like? So in a kind of situation, what does humility look like? Because I can't imagine it means feeling insignificant,
No.
because we're not. But sometimes people associate those two things together, and it's almost this dichotomous thing of I am so small, but I'm also so big and so powerful, but I'm still so small and so in this massive universe. And I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, if that connects to humility or doesn't. How do those things marry up?
Well, let me see if this makes sense. So, say that most people have a family of one sort or another, and some people in the family are going to suffer. They're going to suffer, and you're going to wonder, or I'm going to wonder, what can I do? Now, I can go to that person and take over from them and make sure they're safe, make sure they don't hurt themselves, and then I can go home and feel like I've been someone who's been helpful. Then another person from the family can come, and they can come and they can come and they can be with this person who's suffering. Be with them if they're thirsty and they can't get up to get a water, they can get up to get them water. If they can't buy their food, they can go up and buy their food. But whatever they can do, they have to do themselves. So it's better to be there with someone, paying attention, so you don't treat them like they are a baby. Because no matter how old somebody is, if one of us well-meaning people go in and help too much, they will not learn what they had to learn in the first place. So if someone has gotten themselves into a difficult situation, and people come to help them out and keep them safe, they won't learn how to not get themselves in that difficult situation again. You have to love and humility is knowing when to let your loved ones live, no matter what. You know, once my kids grow up, no matter what they're doing, it's not my business. If they want to ask me what I think, that's fine. But if they don't ask me what I think, I have absolutely, it would be detrimental for me to tell them that I know what should be going on in their life, because I don't know. I mean, if somebody is going to get run over in the street and a car is coming, you're going to yell because you see it happening. That's for sure. So I'm not saying that you don't, you know, tell someone they're walking off a cliff, but sometimes if somebody has walked off a cliff 4 or 5 times, then you got to wonder if maybe they're not seeing the cliff. And if they're not seeing the cliff, why aren't they seeing the cliff? Is it something I'm doing? Am I stopping them so far from the cliff that they get to it and don't see it coming? So I don't, it's kind of symbolic what I'm saying, but we have to be really careful. And it's scary to do because people can die. And they can get hurt, and they will get hurt. But people make their own decisions what they do once they're of age, once they're grown up, they make their own decisions, and those decisions are there, those mistakes are theirs to make. They won't learn without them. And the only thing we can do is live our lives the best way we can without denying who we are, or procrastinating. All these things that we all do. If we can try to limit those things and to do those things as well as we can hope that those other people will see examples of how to do things and bring that example into their life. But there's nothing that we can do. It doesn't make us, it's not a sign of humility to do something for someone that they can do themselves. And it's hard to know what someone can do themselves. So you have to be so careful not to overstep into someone else's life. You have to be very careful, because you don't know what it is. Maybe there's something that you're doing for them that they really needed to, what really caused their demise. And we don't think of that very often, that what we're doing might be part of the reason why our loved one is not doing well. So we have to be very careful, very, very careful, to step lightly and breathe and try to focus on what is at hand in the moment that we can attend to, but not try to think, oh, if we do that, then this might happen. It's like, no, that's living in fantasy, because those are fantasies. That's not reality. It's hard to know these things, but there's a lot out there. There's a lot of places, a lot of self-help that you can find. You can go to therapy, you can go into a 12-step program, you can read books on codependence or books on attachment problems, and we can learn what it is we need to know if we're open to realizing that we don't know everything. So that problem with arrogance gets in the way, where we think that we have the answers, and if we always think we're right, then we're not going to learn anything at all.
That literally brings the conversation kind of back to where we started, which was the being in the present was being in the unknown. And when we think we know, there's an arrogance to that, which actually limits what we are able to figure out or know. Ironically, but there's something else that you were saying, which was so interesting to me, because I watched myself go through an emotion. So you were saying that when someone goes off a cliff and they do it 5 times, and as you were saying that, I was thinking, how stupid are they? But what you said was, well, why are they doing that? And you got curious about what it was that they were doing, and I just wanted to pick up on that, because to me, I feel like that's a really helpful way of there's kind of the difference. I was in judgment on that. I was just noticing it, so I thought I'd bring it up. But I was in judgment on that, and then you got curious, and I feel like that's a better way of tackling someone falling off a cliff 5 times.
So often, I think if someone in your family does something to harm themselves, and you love them, and you love this person, when they harm themselves, if you're attached to them, it's going to hurt you too. And that is going to make you angry, right? That's going to make me angry, because weren't they thinking about how it would make you feel? That's what you think, right? That's what we think when someone we love does something that hurts us. We say, but what about me? Weren't they thinking of how much I would miss them, or how much this would hurt if they did the thing that they're going to do? But instead, think, what am I doing right now to encourage this person to think that way? What can I do so that when this person is going to go do this thing, there's nothing that I'm doing to help that process on, or even to fight against it. I'm just going to let that person figure it out. So to detach, that's called detachment, right? You just want to detach lovingly because you really do want the best for that person. But the best isn't what you think. The best is what they figure out. And maybe they don't figure it out. And maybe it gets worse. But then that's not up to me. It's just not up to me. And so it's a very tricky place to be when you have family members or people that you love that are living a life that you don't think is going to go well. But sometimes I have a really good friend. Her mom, when she was 7 years old, her mom put her to live with her neighbors because she was bipolar and she couldn't, she knew somewhere inside her that she wasn't taking good care of her daughter, and so she gave them to her neighbors, and she was raised in a family. But this girl spent her time, her mother would go on a mania shopping spree, and the next Saturday my friend would take everything back to the store, so she was forever saving her mom from the things that she was doing, and it was draining her. Over the years it drained her. She was always trying to help, and her mom was always doing something to make it worse. And finally, a few years ago, she said, my mom's now homeless. She's decided that she's not going to live anywhere anymore. And I decided I just put my hands in the air because everything I've done, it's never enough. And I can't do it anymore. So she got an insight that she was enabling her mom. She was, getting her out of trouble when the woman had to learn that she had to get herself out of trouble, that it was trouble she caused. And so she had to be the one. Or if she wasn't going to understand that, then the police would come and they would tell her, or a lawyer would come and then she, so you have to realize in life, if you're trying to save someone, they will never learn. It'll never end well. You have to let them go. And she said as soon as she let her mom go, she started putting her life together. And now she's living in an assisted living home and not that far away. And things are okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange, eh? That can happen. I think that's the strangest thing.
It sounds like it's so difficult, I would think, because of you care about that person and you trust, and you've got to trust that they're going to be okay without you, but you've never tried it before because you've always been there. Mm-hmm. And then you try it, and really, because we were never doing anything really anyway, we don't have that power to save people, kind of is really what you're saying. And we let them be and give them that trust, and it might get worse, but it also might get better. But it also might get worse when you're doing everything as well. So yeah, I kind of
right.
really
it's better to realize that the person is making their own choices, and that you're doing everything you can to live your life as well as you can, and to give them love and kindness and tolerance, and to see where their life goes.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't want them thinking you're judging them, because that might be part of their problem, is they feel judged. And so if you're there always looking over their shoulder, there's no way that they're going to find their way.
Yeah, it's so hard to act kind of normal when you feel like people are judging you. I personally can totally relate to that. If I'm in a room and I feel like people are judging me, I'm very insecure. I get very insecure about that. So I can imagine.
Yeah, I freeze up completely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine that. But I was going to say, it just reminds me of something my mom always says. She says that when someone's has fallen down a hole, you're going to best serve them when you're outside the hole. But if you go down there with them, you're just both going to be stuck. So
yes.
That just reminded me. And I also thought, as you were talking earlier about people who try and fill they don't realize their self-worth, and they fill it with other people's praise, other people's attention, and other people's compliments. And I just thought of a cool analogy just right now. It's kind of like if you got a bucket with a hole in it, and you're getting constant inpouring of water, so it feels heavy while people are around. But then when you carry it home and all the water comes out, and you get to your own bed with your own thoughts, the bucket is kind of empty. So you really need
That's
to
a
plug
good
that
one.
hole.
Yes, that's a very good one. And what do you plug the hole with? That's the question.
Yeah, but you said it was I'm enough.
Yeah,
That's the yeah. I'm good enough. I think that's what the picture you were talking about with the drawing, and that's probably
yeah,
what we plug it with. No?
yeah. I'm good enough. I'm good enough because I have resilience. When I'm not good enough, I just have to ask God to help me, to give me strength, to give me courage. Because sometimes things are too much for me. If things are too much for me, I can ask for help, but that help is already inside me. But I have to realize that it's not just me. It's not just me. It's kind of all of humanity is inside me. And I can draw on that. When I was really, really sick in the hospital, and no, before I got into the hospital, the night before my surgery, I did a meditation and went down to where there was cancer in my kidney. And I looked at it and I thought, it looks like, if you can imagine, all your cells are looking at you and they all have happy faces on them because we're all in this together. But then there's these few that are turned away, and they were black and turned away. And I thought, oh my goodness, these cells have completely turned away from me. There is nothing I can do to make them turn back with me. That's too much for one person to deal with. Obviously, whatever has happened here, I am not enough to turn them around and work with me again. I've got to give this cancer to the universe. So I gave it to the universe that night before I had surgery. I saw kind of some black smoke go up out of me in my imagination. I just saw this. And then I slept very peacefully, and I got up the next morning and I wasn't afraid at all. And the surgery went very well, and they did get all the cancer. So I think that, I don't know, but it seemed like I was carrying maybe too much on my own, realizing I have to put my faith in humanity and in the universe and in the ultimate high power. I have to put my faith there and draw on that power to be enough. And then I can be enough, but not just on my own, because things are heavy sometimes and they're just too much for us. And it's okay if they're too much for us. We can get power from our other family members and with our higher power, and just admit that although I'm enough, there are times when I'm not enough, and when I'm not enough, I can find that. I can find that within me. It's okay. I don't need to find it in an ice cream cone, and I don't need to find it in shopping on Amazon, and I don't need to find it in alcohol, and I don't need to find it in drug abuse, and I don't need to find it in feeling hard done by because I don't have what I need in my life. Because really, God has made it so that we have what we need. We have everything we need. We just, because sometimes we feel like we're not enough, we think, oh, well, there must be something here to make me feel like I have enough. And we think it comes from material things, but it doesn't.
But
Material
why
things
are we?
definitely don't do it.
Oh no, yeah. I would definitely, I could relate to that. It's almost like, I think if people do find a respite from their insecurity through buying something, it's only going to be short lived.
Yeah, it's a short term. Yeah. Yes, you have to
Yeah,
realize that, go out with a girlfriend and buy a pair of shoes. And so then, maybe that afternoon feels a little better. And it's fine to go do that as long as it's a reasonable acquisition and it isn't every day and you're not, you know, cranking up your credit card. But you really have to realize that the idea of having enough has to come from within. And so it's worth putting the time in to cultivate that relationship with your higher power. And to do that, you have to look at yourself and accept who you are, and recognize the coping mechanisms you've been using. Recognize them, look at them, seeing if they maybe need to be updated, because maybe they're not working for you anymore. Maybe now they're working against you, and it's time to update and get things working for you again.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think makes people enough? Is it just the credibility? Is it just in being alive and being human? Like, what is it that makes someone enough?
I think that if you are, well, this acceptance is a big thing. You know, you can be aware that you are reacting to something in a way that you shouldn't be. And then you can think, oh, let's see, what can I do about that? But right in between becoming aware and deciding what can I do about that is this space of acceptance. And it's an uncomfortable space, acceptance. So that feeling of being enough is being able to stay still even when you're uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you want to do something, right? Maybe you want to go watch TV. Maybe you want to play the guitar. Maybe you want to go swimming. And you know, there's lots of good ways that you can cope with that. But really being able to sit with it, sit in this uncomfortable place and let it, feel it, understand the sweat and the fear and everything else that you have, and then reach out to someone and say, you know, I'm sweaty and I'm scared because this is what I'm thinking about and what I think is being asked of me, and I need some strength and courage. And so the idea is, together with that person, you can ask God for strength and courage, and that might be enough. And it's good to practice it with little things before big things happen, because big things will happen, and then you wonder if your higher power is going to be enough, if you've grown your higher power big enough so that when something really happens, you're in a car accident or a loved one is in a car accident, are you going to be able to be in the moment and present and kind and tolerant and loving? You know, that's a big ask, and so you have to practice to get there.
Yeah, and like feeling discomfort. And this is gonna. I don't know how you off the time, but I was gonna say that when you're saying sitting in the feeling of discomfort, I suddenly had this thought of like, and it's not gonna hurt you, because feelings don't really, as long as they live, there's a feeling of discomfort. But the minute they're gone, there's almost like they can't really hurt you. Feelings, don't know. Maybe I'm not making sense for that.
No, I get it. I understand that. There's only one thing, you know, sometimes if someone has been having a hard time with their feelings for a very long time, then it might be complicated with their cortisol levels. So they might have higher cortisol levels, and that might um, make their body, maybe it gives them indigestion, so then they have trouble with their gut, or it affects their nervous system, or so it can, and that's why people, you know, when they're young, they can do these emotional roller coasters, you know, and the next day, hey, cool, I'm much more relaxed today. I have a hangover, but I'm okay. But when you get older, you do that. It's not just a hangover anymore. You know, it's not, maybe your back hurts. Maybe your vision isn't so good in one eye. Like there are some things that can happen. So, you know, I started meditating when I was 13 years old, and I wondered whether it was a useful thing to do, but I thought, you know what, I think when I'm older, I'm going to need this. So I'm just going to learn how to do it. So that was lucky that I decided to do that, because
Very
now
forward
when
thinking.
oh, geez, that was lucky. You know, my grandmother was a matron in an old folks home, and my mom used to drop me off at the old folks home, and she'd go visit her sister. So I did spend quite a bit of time with elderly people when I was young, quite young. we used to race the wheelchairs in the basement of the old folks home and stuff. So I spent a lot of time, and we'd always sit for lunch at the tables with the guests. We always sat with the guests. And so we were there at Christmas. We sang Christmas carols with them. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time with them. And I think that was very influential on who I am. Because I don't know, I was faced with mortality. These people were old and they were not able to take care of themselves anymore. They were in a home. It wasn't a nursing home. It was more like a old folks lodge. So they had dances and exercise and Christmas concerts and stuff, but they weren't well enough to just be living on their own. I think that experience really taught me that I had to pay attention to who I was now, because I was going to be, if I was fortunate enough to get old, when I was old, I would need to be, I would need to have put in the time in order to be old successfully. I wanted to be old successfully. And so you have to learn how to meditate. You have to have some sort of exercise regime. You have to listen to your body. So if you eat things that don't agree with it, just don't eat them anymore, so try to have a diet that works for your body. And everybody, we have this history. I have celiac disease, my dad was Irish, and I have celiac disease, but it took me till I was 40 to figure out. I was always having trouble with my stomach. I just didn't know what it was, but I finally figured it out. And thank goodness for that. Now I'm on a very strict diet. I only eat lamb. I don't even eat any vegetables. I really only eat lamb and drink water. It's pretty,
Wow.
It seems like I'm always on some sort of religious quest or something, because I have such a crazy diet. But I think this cancer was supposed to kill me, in a year, and it didn't grow that fast. So I had surgery and it went away. Then I was diagnosed with lupus. And then the lupus doctors told me I'd had it for 10 years. I have never had a lupus episode. So I think this diet has protected me, because carbohydrates are inflammatory, a little bit inflammatory. Some people can handle it. Some people can handle it when they're younger. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to handle it less and less. So it just was harder and harder on my system. So once I gave up all those carbohydrates and ate only what I could digest successfully, it seems that the things that I had, and lupus, I remember when I was in my 20s, people were dying from lupus, and now there's drugs that keep them alive, because lupus can attack your heart and your lungs and your kids. It's quite an autoimmune problem that attacks those major organs. And I haven't had any attacks, and I've probably had it 10 years. The only thing I've noticed is my eyes are dry, and I have to have my teeth cleaned regularly because I have more plaque on my teeth than I used to. So those are some of the small things that lupus does that aren't that bad. I can go to the dentist, I can put eye drops in my eyes. But I think I'm pretty convinced that my diet has saved me. And so, these are the things that you have to accept in your life. And I'm like, yeah, I ate ice cream. I remember what it tasted like. And I loved cookies. I would have rather had a cookie than a steak. But now I don't get any cookies anymore. Oh well, there's other things to do. And that's how I look at life. Is
if only it was that easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's very challenging. It's been a very challenging life. But I tell you, this last idea of humility and gratitude and staying in the moment, man, that has made a big difference to me. Right? I'm not spending, if I spend any time worrying, I really look at it very carefully, and I call someone and I tell them, and we discuss it, and I get over whatever it is I'm worried about, because I don't have time to worry anymore. It's a waste of time. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, that was what I was saying before, that this is an amazing kind of attitude that you've assumed, which is like, I just didn't have time to worry. Like, it's unbelievable. That's so cool.
I might have something important to do while I'm worrying. right?
Exactly. And you're probably not going to do it so well if you're worrying. So
No, I'm not going to
okay,
notice what's going on. So I don't have time for that.
yeah. So I had a question, and we'll end with this maybe, which is, so
Okay.
I'm 23, and I was
Uh-huh.
wondering, what would you, what would kind of, I know this is such a cliche question, I feel cheesy even asking it, but like, what would you um want your 23-year-old self, or just 23-year-olds in this world, or the world that you lived in at 23, what would you want them to know?
Um, I think that it would be it would be very good for everyone to go through some sort of 12-step program and clean themselves up, clean up their thoughts, clean up their actions, clean up their motivations, and really get straight with themselves. Because really, it's a program. You go into a 12-step program and you think that you're going to be solving other people's programs. It turns out you're only going to be solving your own. So that's really good. A spiritual life is really important. You know, I always had somewhat of a spiritual life, but uh, I think that your spiritual life is the most important thing you will have. So at 23, it's time to start having a spiritual life. It's start investigating, start learning about religion, start um, trying to live each day the best you can. And at the end of the day, reflect on the day. If you've made any errors, try to make amends for them that day, and then start the next day. And even if you did that, you'd be good.
So it's find a connection to spirituality, which so many people have
Yes.
written off, totally written
Yeah,
off. There's
it's a real mistake. It's a super big mistake. It's just
yeah,
it's such a there it is for us. This profound knowledge that we're saying, no, I'm okay. I'm okay on my own. It's like, no, you're not. Like life is going to bite you in the bum. You just wait. And when you do, you're going to call on this because you'll have to, because you'll need it. So get to know it now, reunion with it, and have a proper reunion with it so that you're grateful, so that you're not bigger than it. So it's bigger than you. It's always a little bigger than you. Hopefully it'll become really big, but it starts out, it's just a little bigger than you. So you realize that whatever it is that you think, God knows better, or your higher power knows better. And so best to wait and see. And that's what pausing is like. So we could do a lot more pausing and a lot less reacting. So when some friend comes up to you and says to you right in your face, and pause, don't react, pause, breathe, and become aware, maybe, and then maybe you'll understand what's going on, because the first reaction you're going to have is not going to be the best answer. It's going to be something from self-pity or self-doubt, or it's if somebody has shocked you, how dare you, a place of pride, or and you don't want to come from those places. You want to come
yeah.
from a place of love and kindness and tolerance. It's so good, so good.
Wow.
That's what I hope for my 23-year-old, is to learn to come from a place of love, kindness, and tolerance. And that means to yourself first. And then when you filled yourself up with acceptance for who you are, and put yourself into action and to do the things that you are driven to do, that come to you, that they're part of you. You have to come from a place of gratitude and love. You have to. It's
Yeah.
just any other way is going to cause trouble, and we don't
And
need any trouble in our world. People have enough
enough
trouble
of that.
already. Well, I got enough of that. Yeah, we don't need it.
Yeah. And it's a shame because some people, I know my mum passed away when I was quite young, and I
Oh,
know it took, I was 3, she passed away from breast cancer, and
oh,
I, I know it took a tragedy like that for people to understand what's important, what's really important. And this kind of love and understanding that you're speaking to, I feel people engage with that when it really kind of hits them. But this is kind of my hope for people, which is like you're saying, to engage with it before you must, before it becomes a need, a survival need. Engage with it before that point. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, that would be ideal, but for you that didn't work. It got you before you had a chance, right? You said your mom died when you were how old?
I was
How
3.
old were you? 3 years old, you know? Oh my goodness, what a tragedy that is. I have a couple of friends I know I have one in particular, her mom died when she was 5. And she was the oldest, so she ended up taking care of her siblings and really never had time to be a child because she was busy. I don't know, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I've got 3 older siblings from my first mum. Then a year later, so when I was 4, my dad remarried, and I've got 4 younger siblings from that second marriage. And I grew up with my mom, and so it's
well, that's
really
nice. You have a big family. That's very, very nice.
Yeah.
The one thing I found from my friend was her trust. Her trust, because her mom left, it challenged her faith of trust. And so that is something that she's really had to work on developing, is trust in her life, so that sometimes she'll have, say, a friend that she's made, and if that friend doesn't call her often enough, then she won't want that friend anymore. She'll feel like she's not maybe important enough in their life, but it has to do with trust. So she's had to really take on an understanding of her higher power and really work this program, this 12-step program, work it based on the big book, work it very religiously. And she's finding a place of peace and calm because of that. And this will allow her to have better relationships, more trusting relationships. And so, I've helped some people. I have people who, I had one friend whose husband was starting to say that their relationship wasn't going the way he had hoped. And it has been 20 years, but maybe now they weren't going to be able to continue their marriage. And I got her to a big book program. And he called me and said, I saved their marriage. And it wasn't me that saved the marriage. Actually, it was the program. But I think, going through your life and doing a lot of self-reflection, because there's lots of different programs you can get into, but self-reflection is a very necessary part in it. And 12-step programs, they have 1 step, step 4, and then later step 8, but that where you look at yourself through your past and up to the present. And then once you've done that every day, and make sure that all of your interactions have been good. And if they haven't been good, then you call that person and ask them what you can do to make it better, because you don't need anything messing up your day. Anything you've done messing up your day. You don't need any of that. There's other people can mess up your day, but you can't mess up your day. That's not a good idea. Right? We can control that. That's all we can control. We can control whether we mess up our day. We can't control whether other people do. That's out of our control, but we can definitely control that. And I think everybody would sleep without sleeping pills, without any trouble sleeping, if they were just taking control of themselves and making sure that their lives were going okay. Then they'd be able to sleep at night. So that's what I hope for my 23-year-old. I want my 23-year-old to be able to sleep at night and to be grateful for the morning sun, and to get up and think, what does God want me to do today? And then get ready for that. That's what I would want for my 23-year-old, for sure. It's radical. I never would have said that a year ago, but that's what I think now. I know it's radical.
Wow. I feel like I sat in this chair one person, and I'm going to leave it with just a different person, because just going through all those things, and the profundity in that and the self-reflection that it takes to, even as you're talking, to assume what you're saying. And it's almost, I find it incumbent upon me to take what you're saying and bring it to the details of my life, because
Yes.
it's profound in its abstractness, but it's helpful in its integration.
Yes.
But it takes time.
And it takes time, God's time, not our time. You want something to happen? Well, you got to wait, because it will happen when the time is right. But to just have faith and know that every change you make, you just ask for the willingness to accept it, to turn out the way God wants it to, and carry on.